Welcome back, you all, to the Cerebral Palsy and Fitness Podcast. I'm here with Robert Gaines. He is actually the creator of the free Time Mastermind Podcast, which I had the privilege of being on, as well as an author. And today we're going to cover a variety of topics. We're going to cover podcasting. We're going to cover disability awareness, specifically autism, and a whole lot more. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you for having me on, David. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, and I'm always keeping up with your content, and it's very wholesome to see someone that's willing to get a lot of different stories and perspectives out there and bring positivity to it.
I appreciate that. And you were one of my early guests, and I really appreciate that. I know interview style podcasters have, sometimes when they get started, they have trouble finding guests because, guests are like, well, who is this guy? And you were willing to take a shot on me, and I appreciate that. And I've been, like I said before, I've been very fortunate. I've had some wonderful guests, and they've opened up their hearts and shared their stories, and I think that's fantastic. Of course, all of us would like to have a little bit more subscribers, but as far as the content, I've been very grateful for the people that have come on. So, a few more viewers would be nice, but hey, I think we're doing really well. I'm very happy with how the channel's going. And of course, you've got two things going. You've got this, and then you've branched off into another endeavor, and that's very exciting. Maybe we can get into that.
Yeah, of course. Well, starting with you, tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you got to where you are today. Like, what have you? I mean, as what I'm saying is like, what was it like for you in your younger years, and what did you struggle with, and then eventually, how did you overcome those struggles in your life?
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. That's actually a really big question because there were a lot of things that perplexed me about my childhood. Certain things that I didn't understand growing up, and as an adult, I started having problems where other people weren't having problems. And I thought, did I have a bad childhood? Did I, because I'm a thinker and I'm a reader, and I'm always trying to intellectualize and find out what the source of the problem was. And one of the biggest things was I was socially awkward. I was socially inept. I would somebody would tell a joke, and I would tell the same joke, and nobody would laugh. And I was like, well, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong here? And I didn't grow up around many people. There were only 5 houses on the street. There were no children in the neighborhood, and I went to private schools where they didn't tolerate a lot of conversation and things like that. So in a way, I just thought, well, it was because I was isolated as a kid. Both of my parents worked. I was a latchkey kid, so I didn't communicate with them very much. And so there might be some truth to that too, that made it harder for me to socialize because that wasn't happening when I was young. But just about maybe 15 months ago, I took a test called the RADS-R, which tests for autism. And I wasn't just a little bit autistic. Some people say Asperger's. I haven't gotten that deep into the diagnosis, but I know that I think anybody who scores a 76 is considered on the spectrum. And I scored a 126. So I'm way
Wow.
deep into things. And so the beautiful thing about that diagnosis, and a lot of people self-diagnose, and that's okay too, but a lot of the things that I didn't understand about my childhood, and maybe even some frustration with my parents, went away because I thought, oh, I have autism. It's not because they didn't talk to me or because I went to strict schools. But, so I was trying to rationalize, why am I the way I am, and why am I struggling in ways that other people aren't struggling? And now I understand. And also I know the areas now where I need improvement, or where I can be a more contributing member of society and maybe get through some of that social awkwardness, which, without going into too long of a story, when I was in my early 40s, I went through some training for socialization to help me deal, because I had quit drinking at that time. So I was using, and we have an episode about it on our channel, about alcohol as a social lubricant. So a lot of people on the spectrum, or people that have social disorders, will tend to treat it with alcohol. so that they can feel comfortable in a crowd, because I never felt comfortable being around people. So naturally, alcohol was the way that I dealt with it. So I did get some additional training after I got sober, because I was like, I have to be able to socialize. So anyway, that was that part of my life. But as I said, I was born in Louisville, Kentucky originally. When I was 19, I joined the Army. That was the first 3 years was a great experience. I did a total of 8. The last 5 years were a little rough. And then I got out and went to college on the GI Bill. Really struggled to find my place in the corporate world. And when I went to that coaching to learn how to socialize, in a sense, I had an opportunity to reinvent myself. And that's when I started the art gallery, and all of these great business things started to happen. And that was about 2010. So I've been very fortunate to be kind of on an upswing from 2010 to now, after not experiencing much success for that. So if your listeners are out there, if somebody's struggling in their 30s or 40s, I'm telling you, hang on, stick with it, keep going, improve yourself, because I'm so glad I stuck around, because I was depressed. I had, thoughts about different things, but I'm so glad that I stuck with it, because things are better now than I could possibly have imagined. So I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be able to make the transformation. And now with the podcast, the book, and the one-on-one coaching, I'm helping people make that transition themselves. So it's exciting. I'm more excited about the future now at 53 than I've ever been in my life. So I'm so glad that I stuck with it, and that I'm here to be able to do this.
When did you uh, realize at the moment that you felt like, you know what, I have autism, but I accept myself for who I am?
I I think I never, when I was younger, I think my frustration was always pointed externally. I don't think, thankfully, I didn't beat myself up for the trouble I was having. I always thought, I'm really trying to I'm trying to make an effort. I'm trying to make people laugh. So thankfully I didn't, I never, I guess there were very few times where I thought there's something wrong with me. I always knew just something was different. And I was actually relieved when I got the diagnosis, because it confirmed some suspicions. And I didn't struggle with it. I accepted it immediately. It's like, oh, thankfully, I know what's going on now. It's like if you have trouble
Right.
with your car, oh, I just need some oil, or whatever. So yeah. Thankfully, I embraced it immediately as soon as there was no depression about it. I was like, oh, this explains so much. Yeah. So if people are not sure, they can take the test. And the RADS R is a free test. So if anybody's not sure if they're on the spectrum, you can go online and take the test.
Yeah, it's good to hear that you were able to quickly accept it, because there's some people that kind of struggle at the beginning, because they're like, like, why me, like, why am I struggling with this? And then um on top of that, when you don't have that support system to kind of like fall back on, to kind of help build you up and get you back up there, it makes it a lot more difficult to really like grasp it. And then you deal with a lot of you know emotional issues, mental issues, but it seems like you were able to uh, overcome that and cope with that. And you're like, you know what? I'm happy with what I have, and here I am today.
And there are with every disadvantage, there's usually an upside. So of course, autism, I don't have the math autism. I don't have the music autism. In a way, I do have some skills with music. I can't play very well, but I was an audio engineer in the late 90s. But I can't do math, but with the loss of the social ability, I have other things like what they call HRAM. I haven't been tested for it, but I feel very confident that I have it. HRAM just means highly reliable, I think automatic or autonomous memory. In other words, I can memorize things. I can read a book and discuss it 7 years later as if I just read it last week. It's not a
Wow,
perfect
that's really
memory.
cool.
So yeah, so every downside, you notice people that maybe don't have vision, have skills in other areas. So I've never spent a lot of time. I've tried to improve the disadvantages that I have, but I spend more time playing to my strengths. And that's what I would encourage most people to do. Don't, if you're not a fast runner, if you can't bench press 150 pounds, don't worry about that part. Do the part that you do very well and stay really strong in that.
Yes.
And don't spend much time worried about the things you can't do. Spend a lot of time putting the energy into the things that you can do.
Yeah, and I mean, there's always room for you to work on those weaknesses to make them
That's right.
better,
That's
and
right.
to be able to utilize them.
That's right. That's right. I guess the message there is I just try not to get, like, math is very tough for me. Math is really, really hard. And I went through a lot of training to try to get better, and I never got better. And I just abandoned it. you know, I'm going to put my time in something else. It's like playing a musical instrument. I've played, but I just don't seem to improve. So I'm just going to put my time into things where I can see some improvement. Thankfully I never had a dream of being a big mathematician or a big guitar player, but I no longer feel disappointed that I'm not strong in those areas. I try to spend time where I know I can make an impact.
Yeah, you and I have that in common. I wasn't the best in math either, and before I wanted to do education and now healthcare, my actual dream was to become a hurricane hunter. I wanted to go inside hurricanes and study them, and to this day I'm still fascinated by hurricanes. People are like, really, what they're doing. I'm like, have you seen what it takes to really study a hurricane, and the fascinating it is to see it grow and to see the impact it does, and then seeing it like move, wobble, and going from country to country or continent to continent. It's just really awesome, like seeing the inside of it, like the storms forming, and you know
Would you rather be in the vehicle that kind of goes into, well, those are
yeah
mostly
yeah
tornadoes, but, or do you want to be in the
I'd love
plane
to be in the
looking down
plane.
on it?
Right, in the plane, just inside of it, just studying it. I wanted to do that, but my math wasn't so good, so I decided to venture in a different path.
Well, I bet you could probably still get a seat on that airplane though, if you wanted to. But
Oh
something that
yeah.
I encourage people, you can network your way into almost anything. You probably have two associates. You're two contacts away from getting a hold of somebody that's on that plane. Because I know civilians ride on those planes because they have journalists.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I'm
that's
telling you,
so
brother.
cool.
Put press. Get yourself a jacket that says press, and say you're a reporter, which you
Yeah.
are. You're a podcaster, and you could be on that plane. I could see it happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would love to do that one day just to experience it, just to be like, hey, I went inside the eye of a storm.
Yeah, I'm
Nobody else
I'm
can talk
very
about that.
I'm very, very confident that you could make that happen. Yeah.
Because I've heard like stories about how it's like, in there it's like, the cluster of the storms, but you see it like you see all the movements of the barometric pressure, and then the instruments that they use, to measure it. It's really
The
cool.
millibar. Is it the millibars? Is that what
The
they do?
millibars. Yep.
And people don't realize how big these storm systems are. They're as big as continents, Well, I don't know about but they're as big as some, let's say, some countries in Central America. There are hurricanes that are bigger than that. And because I'm actually associated with that industry, as you may or may not know, I'm an insurance adjuster, and my specialty is catastrophes. So when the hail hits, when the hurricanes hit, when there's flood, those are the claims that I've been handling, and I've been doing that continuously since 2011. So I see those photos every day when I get on my desk. I look at, storm damaged houses. Mostly I do cars. And it's unbelievable the amount of force that
Right.
natural disasters bring. But hurricanes are just, they're gigantic. And you see them coming off the coast of Africa. Sometimes that dust blows off the coast and these other wind systems. And then it's the beginning of that hurricane cycle. And we're in peak season right now. I don't think the hurricanes are probably going to calm down until what, the end of November? Is that about when things start to
Just
slow down?
about. I would think so. I mean, I would hope so. Because we've
Yeah,
had we've had hurricanes up to December at some points.
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
And but yeah, I've always found hurricanes fascinating to see and for them to form, in general.
Well, we might get a chance Wednesday of this coming week, or this week, I guess, if you consider Sunday the beginning of the week. Yeah, we may see that here in Central Florida. And how far away are you from Orlando?
I'm only about 20, 30 minutes from Orlando. So I'm
Okay,
like
yeah,
right outside of it in a small town. And I don't know if you know where Sanford is.
I do. Yeah,
I think we touched on it on your last podcast. I think we
yes,
talked
because I'm
about
an
Puerto
hour south
Rico.
of Orlando. Yeah,
That's
I'm an hour.
right.
So we're almost on the opposite sides of Orlando. I'm to the south, and you're I believe, to the north. Is that right, of Orlando?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. Yeah, like it's so fascinating. It's pretty cool that you do those claims. But I'm sure it's to you it's traumatic sometimes seeing those pictures, seeing the damage and having to probably contact those people that need that assistance. But at the same time, you're like you find yourself in a position where how do I bring comfort to them?
That's
You
right.
know?
I think the toughest, and thankfully I don't struggle with it, but some of my coworkers struggle with, because when a catastrophe happens, it's a very high volume of claims, and you have to phone call after phone call, email. I mean, it's the volume of what you're handling is immense, and people struggle with empathy. So when you got a job to do and you got to go, phone call, it's very easy to forget that that's a customer on the other end of that phone. And I move fast. That's why I'm still doing it after all these years, because I get, they look at our numbers, our production number. I get my numbers, but I make sure that I remember that there's a human being on the other side of that phone. I express empathy. And even after all these years of looking at storm photos, it's still, sometimes the devastation still shocks me. So I try to stay connected to it, because it's very easy to see that stuff every day and let your mind get numb to what's happening. I used to work in the hospital during my last 5 years of the Army, and we've all seen those burned out nurses that have been doing it 10 or 20 years too long, and they forget that that's a person. That's a patient in the bed. And I'm sure you and I both, David, have had experiences that were less than optimal with a nurse or a medical professional that just has lost their empathy because they stayed in that field for too long. So yeah, you have to keep your heart connected with your work.
Yeah, and you also have to think about work-life balance too.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and we're on mandatory overtime right now, so that's pretty tough for us. Plus, this will be, I've shot by the end of this evening. I will have shot 4 episodes on my 2 days off. So yeah, work-life balance. That's a good one. I'm still working on that.
Yeah, I mean, little by little, and uh, do you feel that I don't know if you've seen it in Central Florida, but we're seeing a lot more flooding in like this area in general as far as storms. Do you feel like eventually people or companies will shift towards offering flood insurance for a lot of these cities around Orlando?
I'm glad you asked that. This is gonna shock a lot of people. My sister was affected by Hurricane Katrina, which was 2005. It's almost 20 years ago. It'll be 20 years next year. And I was surprised to find out that the number, after people going through Katrina, the next year, there were actually less people with flood insurance than the year before. And of course, that's all about economics. And we have a number of, and I won't say any companies because I don't want to lose my job,
Yeah, of
but
course.
a number of companies have left Florida. They're not even offering insurance here anymore. And the state of Florida provides some insurance through their own company called Citizens. I don't want to get too technical and get too deep in the weeds for the audience,
Right,
but
right.
I will say that the state of Florida, and it's not necessarily a mistake, it's not necessarily their fault, but they have too many policyholders. So even the state of Florida has too many customers. What they're supposed to do is be the insurer of last resort.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, with all of these other insurer and carriers leaving the state, the state has taken on too many policyholders. So now they're financially vulnerable. And that's a good thing about insurance, because you have Allstate, you have State Farm, you have AAA, you have the risk
Right.
spread across a bunch of companies. But now the state of Florida is underwriting all of these policies. So I think, David, what you're actually going to see is, you're going to see when this hurricane comes through, and it looks like it will, we're going to have less people with coverage. And after it comes through, rates are going to go up, and even less people will have coverage. And it's unfortunate, but it's economics. We have people in the economy that are having to decide between buying their medication or groceries, or paying their electric bill, or paying insurance premiums. Now, if somebody has a loan on a car or a loan on a house, you have to pay your insurance, of course. But the people that own their cars outright, or they own their home outright, they can just carry the basic liability and they won't get flood insurance. So yeah, and unfortunately, insurance has gotten to the point where it's unaffordable. So I think FEMA will be helping a lot of people. But of course, $750 when your whole house is gone is not very much. So yeah, I hope
Right.
this.
It's
Go ahead.
it's pretty much a fraction of what you can get for like help. It's enough to get some things, but not like everything.
Right, right.
And it's
People are
taking a
more.
lot of people to,
Go ahead.
right. It's taking a lot of people to rebuild. Because of the cost and then what you receive.
That's
Because
right.
I'm sure as with every company, they have a criteria that they got to follow.
That's right.
Procedures.
Even with FEMA, all those houses that were, I think you mentioned the hurricane earlier, the one that went through the Keys,
Yeah.
was probably Ian. A lot of people didn't know, because there's still a lot of trailer homes on the Keys, and those were considered total losses. So they got so much rain or water in them that they were considered to be unrepairable. And the people, the homeowners, accepted an agreement with FEMA. They took the FEMA money, but that was under the agreement that they were going to destroy their home, to take it away, because it's a total loss. They have single wide metal trailer homes that were built in the 90s, and they're completely saturated with water. They're dangerous because of mold. And FEMA's position, and possibly rightly so, is it needs to be removed and then rebuild. And then these people, we're talking about people in their 60s or 70s on a fixed income, and now they have to build a home from scratch in the Keys. Even a 1,000 square foot home in the Keys will cost you, I assume, about $200,000 to build. And we're talking about people that are Social Security recipients. So it's a strange situation. Prices are going up here, and people should just be very, very smart with their money. And if they can afford insurance, then they should definitely have it.
Yeah, definitely important. And the most important thing is, as long as you're still here, you're still healthy, you have your family, that's all that matters. 'Cause everything else, you can eventually replace it.
That's right. Material goods can be replaced. And of course, the other thing too, not to go too deep on the hurricanes, but of course, if the government is suggesting to leave the area, I've been doing this since 2011, and I've seen what happens when people stay inside the house. If the government says go, go, don't play around. I know a few hurricanes weren't as bad as what they thought, and people left town and they got hotel rooms and they were disappointed that their town wasn't destroyed. But if the government says evacuate, please evacuate. There's not enough helicopters and buses to save everybody. So get out early if you can. Be smart, like your family's being smart, using sandbags and everything. There's no reason for somebody in the United States to lose their life because of weather. Get away from it, get away from the danger, go, stay the weekend with some family or something. But yeah, if the government says to take a few days away, then please leave the area.
Definitely, definitely. And so, uh, veering away from storms and insurances, I know that you had began your podcast, and we went over this a little earlier. I know it's called the Free Time Mastermind Podcast, and I was a part of it. How did you come about starting the podcast, and was that an idea you came up with solely?
That's another good one, and I don't get asked that very often, so I appreciate that. It started as a mastermind group. So me and some friends got together. We were already informally meeting one on one, conference calls and things like that. And I started introducing some groups of my friends to other groups of my friends that didn't know each other before. And I said, hey, let's formalize this. Let's, like, every Thursday night, let's get together. And I bought Zoom Pro, which I still have, great product, by the way. And we started the group. And as that evolved, we built a website. I even did some marketing to try to bring in some members from the outside. And I'm very direct, I'm very honest about everything that didn't go as well as we had planned. Advertising can be tricky on Meta. You can spend a lot of money and get no results, as we discovered. But through the process of starting the mastermind group, I thought I want to do two ways to bring people into the mastermind group. I want to advertise, and then I also want to do what we call organic reach. And the easiest way to do that is a YouTube channel, because one, it allows me to demonstrate the expertise of the guests. Sometimes it demonstrates my expertise. So the YouTube channel was actually a natural extension of the mastermind group.
Awesome. So that way, and the thing about it is, when you consolidate both, you're engaging all kinds of different traffic, and you're bringing about more people, a wider audience to what you're offering.
That's right. That's right. And I do have I don't know what you would call it. What is it when you have an intention that's not out in the open? I do have an ulterior motive. That one great thing about the podcast, and if somebody's thinking about doing a podcast, just do it. Just get a camera, use your phone, whatever, just start. Because something that I knew before I began, but it's been even better than I expected. A lot of people that I've invited on, I didn't know them. I either found them on Facebook. There's a few people, David, I've invited on the podcast. I just liked their YouTube video, and I reached out to them. One guy had, I think, almost 2 million views on his YouTube channel. And I thought, there's no way this guy's going to come on. He came on, but the ulterior motive is some of these people that come onto the podcast that I didn't know before, I'm still in association with. And a few of them I would consider friends like you. So, we started this whole podcast today about, talking about being socially awkward. And you made a good point about we need a good network of support people around us. And being a podcaster, being a host, and having these wonderful people come in, it's been the quickest way for me to grow my base of friends, because I'm far away from Orlando, so it's hard for me to do face-to-face networking. But yeah, podcasting is a great way to make new friends. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Do you ever, I don't know if you do this, but I do little shorts, like reels of episodes. Do you ever experiment with that?
I just started about maybe 8 or 9 days ago. I use a program called Descript, and it's very easy to use. So if you're 53 and you're not very tech savvy, I figured it out pretty fast. I wouldn't say I'm not tech savvy, but the older you get, the less you want to learn something technical. I think I can speak for everybody on that. But it was pretty easy. It has AI, so I can tell what my prompt on this, David, is I just say find. So I'll feed it the full 1 hour episode, and I'll say, hey, Descript, find 7 impactful reels under 30 seconds that have a hook in the first 3 seconds. In other words, so it's going to be something that's going to bring them in. And the beauty of that is, even the channel's been up for, I don't know this exactly, but let's just say the channel's been up for 6 months now. When I started the reels 8 or 9 days ago, the reels have gotten 90% of the views in the last 6 months. So just throwing those reels up, and now I drop a reel every day. Because as a matter of fact, your reels are just now coming into rotation. I think your first reel aired yesterday, and then your second reel aired today at 2:00. And the reels are blowing up. So my 1 hour interviews, they might get 30, 40. I have a few that have gotten hundreds of views. But the shorts, David, yours got I think 134 yesterday after it was only up a couple of hours. So yeah, shorts get a lot of attention, but ultimately, if you're a podcaster, you want those shorts to be engaging. You still need the likes,
Mhm.
the subscriptions, and the comments, and you don't get as much of that from the shorts. So you get eyeballs from the shorts, but ultimately, as you and I both know, you still have to get the likes, you have to get the subscribes, you have to get the engagement.
Right. Right. And and thinking about that, what does that tell you about this generation of
Mm.
individuals that watch YouTube channels? They're not, they don't, their attention span is shorter. So by having those reels, they can watch it and within 30 seconds they have, oh, this is what they're talking about. So by watching the reel, it'll be like, you know what? I like this short episode. I want to watch more. Hence, click, they try to find the episode and they watch the episode fully. It's a grabber almost.
And you can chain, of course, my stuff's on YouTube. I know a lot of podcasters, their stuff is audio only, so I don't know if they can do this. But on YouTube, of course, all my shorts are chained together. So if they like yours, it might show them the next short and the next short and the next short. And like you said, on your shorts, if you click on it, they can be taken directly to the full episode. So if they like your short, if they like your presentation, because the shorts so far only feature the guest. I don't put myself in the shorts. Maybe a quick reaction of me laughing, but I'm not talking, because even though I'm doing a lot of talking now, on my podcast, the guest is the star of the show. So, I want people to hear their story, not what I have to say. And but anyway, if they get engaged with the guest, there's always that link there where they can go to the full episode. But I will say, I'll comment on something that you said. My mother I was born to older parents, which also may have contributed to the autism. We don't know. That's they think that's a contributing factor. But my mother grew up on radio, and her parents told her, that quit listening to the radio, that radio's going to rot your brain. And then TV came in, it was black and white. And they told that generation it's going to rot your brain. I'm the MTV generation. I grew up in the 80s, and we were watching MTV, which is, what is that? That's short format. That's a song, 3 to 5 minutes. Whereas before that, everything was movies until the 1980s. People forget that. So this phenomenon is not new. And of course, what are we telling people now that are 13, 14, 15 years old? TikTok's going to rot your brain. Well, we were telling people radio was going to rot their brain in the 1950s. So I think we're going to be fine. I'll just say that because we've seen this before. But the important part is to have engaging content so they can get a little breadcrumb, they can get a little taste, and then they can go to that long format content that's going to enrich their mind. So yeah.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're experimenting with that, and hopefully helps drive more traffic, new traffic for you.
Absolutely. Podcasting's expensive, as you know, David. These microphones, the lights, I have an editor. His name's Javon. He does a great guy. I met him on Upwork. And, Zoom Pro is a subscription. I think that just went up. That's $160 a year. I use Descript. So yeah, right now it's a real expensive hobby. So yeah, I'd like to I don't care about making money as a podcaster. I'm thankful I have a good job, but I'd like it to, eventually I'd at least like the YouTube channel to pay for itself, at least pay for this microphone, and then I'll be happy.
So, of course, with the podcast, you also have a book that just recently came out, and of course, my episode is featured in it. Is the book basically a collection of the podcast itself, but it's just basically in book format where people can read about it?
No, and this is it, Scintilla. Of course, it's reversed there in the video, but the ultimate guide to generating business ideas, products, and services. So the podcast listing is actually an addendum at the end of the book. So basically, obviously, the podcast, part of the purpose of the podcast is to drive people to become members of the mastermind. its other purpose is to help sell the book. But in turn, in the back of the book, it's encouraging people to watch the podcast. So it connects everything together. But no, the sole purpose of the book, the best example I like to give is if somebody's in a dead-end job and they know they want to do something, they're just not sure what. Like, I want to start my own business, or I want to invent something, but they don't have any idea where to start. This book answers that question. This book is about how to think through the process of what kind of business you can come up with, what kind of product, what kind of service. Do you want to do an iPhone app? Do you want to have a physical product? Do you want to do a Kickstarter to have something built? This talks about all that. I talk about protecting your intellectual property. And so that, anyway, that's the solution that this solves. Somebody who wants to do something and they don't even know where to start. This book answers that question, because there's already plenty of books out there for once you already have a business idea or you have a product or a service idea, but nothing to help that spark. That's why it's called scintilla, which is Latin for spark. This book will help your brain come up with that idea, and it helps evaluate whether that idea is viable.
That's awesome. At least they know there's a guide out there that they can turn to and read about it, and then be able to reflect on it, and maybe use those ideas to help, like you said, build their own brand or their own business to thrive.
And we've all seen things. We've all had thoughts where we thought something should exist that doesn't. And that's how this book started. I won't go into the big long story behind it, but basically I was on a project where we had to come up with products completely from scratch. I was like a fish out of water. I'm an operations guy, so I can come in and I can establish rules, regulations, processes. I'm very analytical. I'm a binary thinker. I can put things into boxes and organize and write standard operating procedures. So I'm that person. But when I was asked to come up with stuff from nothing, from thin air, I was like, I don't really have that as a skill. So I started looking for books of how to come up with a business idea. And when I realized it didn't exist, I went, wait a minute, that's the idea. So if you see something out there, look, why isn't there a shopping cart that takes itself back to the, because I watch people all the time. They just leave their shopping cart next to their car, which I never do. I take the cart back. I'm a good citizen, But think about that. You could invent a cart that just takes itself back, because especially when it's raining, you don't want to push that cart all the way back. So things like that. If you think of something that should exist that doesn't, that might be a great idea. You might be a millionaire. You could be the next Elon Musk. Who knows?
I mean, I know. Up north, like, we're talking about countries like Canada and stuff. I was there when I was a kid, and I remember stepping in a grocery store and getting a cart. And in the cart, there was a little device there that you had to put in a quarter to use it. Now, if you didn't return the cart, you wouldn't be able to get your quarter back. And I'm like, that's brilliant, because if you leave your quarter, that quarter belongs to whoever claims it, and that's one way a company can make money. That's right. Just because you're not doing your due diligence as a customer by returning the cart and keeping everything organized and neat.
Absolutely. And for those of us that have been around long enough, speaking of grocery stores, I was a kid in the 1980s. We've always had some connection to Florida. I'm from Kentucky originally, but my sister was living in Longwood, not too far from Orlando. And I came down one summer to visit, let's just say the summer of 84. It was around there. And we went into an Albertsons grocery store, and we were at the checkout, and there's this red laser next to the cash register. Now, previous to that, nothing got scanned anywhere in America. There was a label on that apple that said $1, and the lady would type in $1, and there was this paper, almost typed receipt. And I remember seeing that, because I think some of the very first grocery scanners started here in Florida, and it was amazing. And they used to, you would take your product and wipe it across the laser, which they still kind of have a version of that. But I remember seeing that for the first time. Think of how much money that person made that just created the UPC code and the laser reader. I mean, that had to make somebody billions of dollars, and a relatively simple idea.
I remember also seeing, I don't know if you were stepping on Dixie, but when I was a kid up in the 90s, they had these uh, little red like coupon holders where you could clip out the coupon and then take it with you, and it was like it would flash just so you would it'd give you grab your attention. Like, oh, coupon, just grab it and take it to go.
I've seen those, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking the other day, I don't see couponing done as much as at the checkout. I would used to see people with stacks of coupons, and I don't see that much anymore. Do you think there's still couponing? I don't know if that trend has gone away or what
Um,
happened.
I it's funny that you mentioned that because I know they made a show based off that. People that would have like a ton of coupons, and they'd go in the line with like a ton of groceries, and they scan like hundreds of coupons, and by the end of all the scanning they'd pay like a dollar or $2. And I'm like, and this was on TLC. I'm like, imagine how much that station made just by filming the episode, having the person who does the couponing in the episode, and then the grocery store themselves, the company themselves, for being featured.
Yeah, there were big
Yeah.
websites associated with that pre-pandemic. So I noticed the couponing kind of went away during the pandemic. But before the pandemic, I forget that last time everything prices of everything went up. I forget what year it was. Maybe I think it was 2012. There was some stuff going on. The economy got rocky for a year there, and prices went up. And I remember a website. I don't know why I know this, but there's a website called Coupon Mom, I think, and everybody was going to that because she had access to the coupons on everything, and people, like you said, they'd go to the cash register with $200 worth of groceries and walk out for $150, which that's a deal.
Yeah, it's incredible how this technology and everything else that we do is just evolving every day now. Now everything's on your phone.
That's right. Yeah, the phone changed everything. Once they started putting cameras in phones, it changed everything. And actually, I wrote, I think, I can't tell you what page, but in here, I talk about how up until 2005, the phones kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. But once they put internet capability, they had to increase the size of the monitor. And then people started, when they added the camera, they had to add the memory. And then phones started getting bigger all over again. So cell phones started off the size of a brick, got down to the little tiny Motorola Razor, and then they started getting big again. So changes in technology can be quite fascinating to watch.
Oh yeah, now you have phones the size of tablets that can
That's
fold
right.
in your hand. You can put them in your pocket.
That's right. Yeah, next it'll be holograms. It'll project an image on a wall or maybe a virtual 3D image in space. Or we'll all have those goggles on. All these companies keep trying the glasses and the goggles, and the public just don't seem to really be
Yeah,
into that, but the companies keep pushing it. So maybe they'll come up with some version
yeah.
that, is comfortable to wear, because that stuff looks a little strange to me.
And for my listeners out there, my dog seems to have found somebody out there. They're probably walking their dog. Every time somebody walks their dog, they bark. So,
You
yeah,
need, you
but
need some get some moving blankets off of Amazon. I'm telling you, it cuts down
are
so
they
much
good
noise.
for soundproofing?
Yeah, I have it on every wall. Now my door to this room is actually open, but there's even soundproofing on the other side of the door. And when I close this door, there's no echo, there's no reverberation, and I'm in the
Interesting.
middle of, like I said before, narrating. I'm doing the audiobook version of Scintilla, so this room is as quiet as a mouse. I mean, if
Wow.
somebody really steps on their engine and revs their engine outside, really low frequencies will still get through here, but dogs barking and people talking, it shuts all of that out. So yeah.
Wow. I have to definitely look into that. Maybe look on Amazon or something.
I'll send you the Amazon link. I bought 6 like super heavy moving blankets. Plus, if you ever move, David, you got moving blankets, you know, or if you meet a homeless person that needs a blanket, you're going to have extra blankets. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or if we get cold, you can just put one on and be like, you'll be warm the entire time.
That's right. And these are thick too. These are heavy duty moving blankets. I'm really glad I bought them, and they're not that expensive.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Motorola Razr. Now they just recently released like a modern version of it where it's less thin, but it folds too. And it has a screen. The big screen, just like the modern day smartphone.
Yeah, they're really trying to take back market share from Apple. People are getting frustrated with Apple. I won't go on a tirade about that, but for good reasons. Apple is sometimes a difficult company to deal with, and I don't know. I'm not saying this is a conspiracy, but I noticed as soon as they announced that the new Apple was coming out, suddenly my battery doesn't hold a charge very much anymore, and I'm like, yeah, I think they
I've heard that
tweaked the battery.
years. For years, they've been talking about that, and people have been going through it. And I'm like, in my opinion, I'm like, that's just the phone. I mean, it gets old, and you use it a lot, and I think it's just that. It's not.
Right.
Nobody's gonna tap into your phone and drain your battery on purpose.
Yeah, somebody's in wherever they are in California. They're like, David, we got to turn his battery down.
So he can get a new one. Yeah, I'm an Android person, so I've never touched an iPhone because it's
Oh
not
wow,
very user friendly, and you can't really customize it either. So you can, with an Android, you can customize it the way you want,
that's right. It's a lot
it's
more
it's open
open
source.
source.
You can do anything with it.
Yeah, there's even some new. There's a guy he's a security expert and a big time YouTuber on security named Rob Braxman, and he sells Google phones that are de-Googled. So he basically takes all the software off, and you
Interesting.
can load
Wow.
open source software on it. Like for the book, I wrote this in MS Word initially, but now I'm using I think it's called Libre, which is a free open source. It's just as good as MS Word, just as fun, but it doesn't cost me because every time I bought a new computer, I'd have to buy MS Office, which is not cheap. And
No, it's not.
this Libre is I donated to them, of course, once I downloaded it, because I think anybody getting the free software should at least support the developer. So I always donate. But yeah, I have basically everything that MS Office has, but it's all open source. So anyway, yeah, the Android phones are much more. You can use a lot of open source software, but you can't do that on an Apple. I don't think at all. It's very proprietary.
Yeah, well, Robert, aside from all the topics we've covered and everything, um, what is one piece of advice you would give, or, of course, multiple pieces if you'd like, in regards to starting your own business, starting your own podcast? Uh, what do you feel it takes for that person to really thrive?
I the first thing I always tell people is get started, because, and I'm guilty of this. So I'm a big book reader, especially audiobooks. I go through a ton of them, but of course, reading all of that information, you're just getting the theory. And theory is nice. It's like training in the martial arts. You can do katas, you can do movements, you can even spar a little bit in the dojo or the gym. But getting into a street fight is it's a completely different thing. And so you can read all the books you want on business. I read a book on business. I probably get through one about every 3 or 4 days. However, you have to apply it. So the number one thing I tell people is just get started. And the business that you start is probably going to evolve. So a lot of people go to college to be an accountant, and they end up working in a law firm, or they go get a law degree and they end up working in an accountancy firm. So don't get so caught up in waiting for people want the perfect opportunity. Don't wait for that. Just get started. So number one, get started. Number two, get a mentor. I'm 53. I made a lot of business mistakes. I've had a recording studio. I've had an art gallery. I've run tons of businesses for other people. I've helped other people start businesses. I've seen the mistakes. get with somebody like me. There's a lot of, even access to me is free. I'm easy to find on Facebook. I'm always willing to help people. It doesn't matter to me whether someone's in the mastermind group or not. And people are always willing to help. So get started, seek a mentor, and then the rest really will take care of itself, because the mentor, I can prevent you from having to make all the mistakes that I made, So knowing what to do is important, but also knowing what not to do is important. So those two things, just get started, whatever it is, just, put the shovel in the dirt and get ready and start moving forward, and then get somebody that knows what they're talking about to help support you.
That is awesome. 110% I agree. I agree with what you said. Um, and then where can my listeners inquire about you as far as your book, your podcast, and of course your business ventures?
I think the best place is probably the YouTube channel, because that really displays the strength of what we have to offer. We've had some great guests, and people interested in business can go on there. Of course, it's the Free Time Mastermind. We call it the Free Time Mastermind Podcast, but on YouTube, it's just Free Time Mastermind. We do have a website, www.freetimemastermind.com, but all of that information is on YouTube. So if you go to our YouTube channel, every video in the description has a link to our website. It has a link to our Facebook page. It has a link to buy the book as well.
Well, that's fantastic, and like I said, it's a pleasure always getting to talk to you, to network with you, which we mentioned it was real important, and just to connect. That's always wonderful.
Yeah, especially a fellow Floridian.
Yes, that's right. So, Robert, thank you so much for your time and for being on the podcast today.
It was great seeing you again, David. So hopefully we'll come out okay through this hurricane. Wishing all the best for you and your family.
Yeah, same here. I think we will. It's just gonna be, you just gotta ride it out, like a typical Floridian.
Good seeing
All
you,
right,
David.
well,
Thank you so much.
definitely same here as always. So if you guys want to watch this episode or listen to it, you can go on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and every other major podcasting outlet out there. And as always, until next time, stay blessed and stay healthy. Have a good one.
Thank you, David. Bye-bye.